Welcome to the Dick Morris and Doug Depierro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group, and Doug Depierro has a special message from our sponsor, God.
He is. First of all, happy Easter, everyone, seriously. I want to do the Lord's Prayer. Are we ready, Dick?
Yep.
Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. Happy Easter, everybody.
Happy Easter, everyone. All right, Dick, let's get the show on.
No regrets. There is a poll by Gallup that shows that 98% of the people who voted for Trump would vote for him again. Listen to what Lionel Richie has to say about that. The winning coalition that propelled Trump back to the White House is still with him. A UMass Amherst YouGov poll released this week showed that just 2% of Trump voters say they regret their vote and would have voted for someone else if they had it to do over. A Gallup poll released this week showed Trump is more trusted than anyone else on the economy, and that the three most trusted people or groups on handling the economy are Trump, Republican leaders in Congress, and Speaker Johnson. Only single-digit percentages of voters say they have a great deal of trust in any of the Democrats who Gallup polled. Overall in the poll, they said, do you trust Trump to do the right thing on the economy? 55 said yes, 44 said no, and which is wonderful.
Wow, that is great, huh?
And they're right. Jobs data shows a tremendous hiring throughout the country. Woody Guthrie has thought about that. The number of Americans filing...
Real quickly, what was the 98% that voters that voted for him?
98% said that of the Trump voters said they had 98% of the people who voted for Trump said if they had it to do over again, they would vote for Trump
98%.
Again.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
Good.
The number of Americans filing new applications for unemployment benefits fell last week, suggesting labor market conditions remain stable in April, although uncertainty around tariffs is making businesses hesitant to boost hiring. Initial claims for unemployment benefits dropped 9,000 for the week ending April 12th. So the economists are continuing to predict all hell is going to break loose, and doesn't break loose.
Right.
In fact, retail sales are up sharply. U.S. shoppers increased their shopping list last month, fueled by a spending spree on big-ticket items from gadgets to cars before Trump's new tariffs kick in. Retail sales rose 1.4% in March. They had fallen 1.2% in January. Sales at dealers of autos and parts rose 5%, while electronics retailers had a 1% increase. Sporting goods retailers enjoyed a 2.4% gain. Online retailers a 1% gain. Restaurants up 1.8%. An economist said these numbers simply blow out. They're simply blowout numbers in March. Retail sales where the rush is on, like a gigantic clearance sale. He said consumers are expecting sharply higher prices next year and are clearing the store shelves and picking up bargains where they can. Unbelievable. March data from the Census Bureau, It
says they have a little money in their pocket, too, so that's a good thing.
March data from the Census Bureau reports that most retail segments posted growth for the month, with auto dealers getting the biggest bump, up 9.2%, as consumers rushed to buy cars before tariffs went into effect. Americans also spent more on furniture and even dined out more, as spending remained conspicuously strong. And this is the key quote by Bankrate senior industry analyst Ted Rossman. Perhaps things aren't as dour as consumer sentiment figures and economists would have you believe. The past few years, Americans have continued spending despite financial worries and challenges, and I might add, despite the predictions of liberal Democratic economists.
That's beautiful, isn't it?
Isn't it great? When we look at the gross domestic product, the GDP, to compute the growth rate in the United States, we often overlook the idea that the GDP is not just production of goods, but also of services, which are not always included in the data. Over the past 20 years, the U.S. has run a $5 trillion surplus in financial, digital, and other tech services that are often not counted or undercounted in trade deficit figures. Those services predominantly delivered over information and communication technology, digitally enabled services, licenses to use computer software, cloud computing, data storage services, and royalty payments for industrial designs to manufacture specialized equipment. In other words, in global trade, the U.S. has come to dominate the technology service industries of the future, while the world provides America with mundane and low-value products of the past. And
I'm wondering if they could help me just now with the problem I just had with all my computers.
Yeah, they probably
Getting
could.
ready for the show, I had nothing but, I got to sign in again and buy a new product. I'm ready for my Coming to America,
Yep.
Honda. So Honda's coming to America. We have a song on that there, look. Honda is considering switching some car production from Mexico and Canada to the United States, aiming for 90% of cars sold in the country to be made locally in response to the new tariffs that Trump is doing. The Nikkei newspaper reported Tuesday. Japan's second biggest automaker by sales plans to increase U.S. vehicle production by as much as 30% over 2 or 3 years in response to Trump's decision to put 25% levy on imported vehicles. The U.S. was Honda's biggest market last year, accounting for nearly 40% of the global sales. The automaker sold 1.4 million vehicles in the U.S. last year.
So the tariffs are working.
Absolutely.
The tariffs are absolutely working. We now have Ford, GM, Chrysler, and Honda as the United States auto manufacturers. Honda.
Yeah.
I mean, this is entirely because of Donald Trump's tariffs.
You know what it is? I keep saying it. So many presidents said, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And other countries just said, wow, let's call this bluff. There's no bluff with Trump. When he says, I'm going to do this, he's going to do it. That's pretty much it. You want me to move on to this? Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, moves chip production to the U.S. Tuesday. It's a key processor chip would soon be made at TSMC's new production site in Arizona. This time, this product will be manufactured in the United States. Beautiful thing, right? Though AMD's plans predate U.S. President Trump, the return to office, tech companies' efforts to diversify their supply chain have taken on added significance. But, given his escalating tariff war.
Yeah.
Do 7? Okay. NVIDIA is working with the Taiwanese electronic manufacturers Foxconn and Wistron to build 2 supercomputer factories in Houston and Dallas, the company announced Monday. Mass production at both plants is expected to ramp up in the next 12 to 15 months. The U.S. chip maker said it's already producing its Blackwell chips, which provide capacity for generative AI and accelerated computing at the Taiwan Semiconductor Factory.
In Phoenix.
In Phoenix, right. Should have said that, right,
Yeah.
Dick? That was important. NVIDIA expects the investment to result in hundreds of thousands of jobs and drive trillions of dollars in economic security over the coming decades. Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Boy, I mean,
Hundreds
just
of
look at
thousands.
this evidence, the piling up, the incredible line of businesses coming to America. It's unbelievable. And it's entirely due to Donald Trump. Didn't happen before him. It's incredible.
To his non-bluff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Okay.
let me tell you, and I still get blowback from the Dems and the liberals that say, oh, this is wrong, the tariffs, and Donald Trump is going to destroy America. They're not listening to us, I don't think.
Now, the markets aren't listening to them.
Yeah, right. That's more like
Okay, when we come back, probably the most important story of the week, maybe damn close to the year. The federal government has now confirmed its belief that COVID was released, perhaps deliberately, by a lab leak from China and was covered up by Fauci and the whole federal government.
Yeah.
Coming to that after the break.
Okay.
Sorry, the Dick Morris and Doug Depierro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
Let me give the call-in number to our I was going to say viewers, to our listeners. 800-848-9222. Call in with anything you have. 800-848-9222.
Okay, this next story is very, very, very important.
It must be one of the most important stories in history at this point.
Yeah, it is.
In our lifetime.
The White House has said that the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 virus, a publication of the U.S. government that was repeatedly used by public health officials and the media to discredit the lab leak theory, and was prompted by Fauci to become the preferred narrative, is a lie, was not true. Erase it. Gone.
Yeah.
They
We
said-
kind of felt, a lot of people felt that anyway.
Yeah, but
now they're proving
they were conspiracy theorists. Now they're accurate reporters.
Right.
So, number one, the virus possesses a biological characteristic not found in nature. 2, data shows that all COVID-19 cases stem from a single introduction into humans. This runs contrary to previous pandemics where there were multiple spillover events.
What does that mean?
That leak did it all.
Right.
Otherwise, in other cases, there's all kinds of reasons why viruses spread.
Right.
But in this case, there's only one.
Right.
3, Wuhan is home to China's foremost SARS research lab, which has a history of conducting gain-of-function research, gene-altering and organism supercharging, with inadequate biosafety levels. 4, the Wuhan Institute of Virology researchers got sick with COVID-like symptoms in the fall of 19, months before COVID was discovered at the wet market or spread throughout the world. 5, by nearly all measures of science, there was evidence of a natural origin would have already surfaced, but it did not. So it's just very, very clear what went on. And this is the White House speaking, a lab-related incident involving gain-of-function research is the most likely origin of COVID-19. Current government mechanisms for overseeing this dangerous gain-of-function research are incomplete, severely convoluted, and lack global applicability. Just so, in case you've been hiding under a rock, gain-of-function research means you take a virus that was dangerous but not deadly, and you rejigger it so it becomes deadly. And you take a virus that can't easily spread from animals to humans, and you make it easy to spread. You do exactly the opposite of what you should do.
And the theory of this is so they can develop
Antidotes, vaccines.
antidote for
Yeah.
a vaccine.
Right.
That's the theory behind this. Bunch of
I'm
boolah.
going to murder you to test my facilities for reviving you.
No, I'm going to shoot at you to see if your armor works.
Yeah, right, exactly. Secondly, the
God.
EcoHealth Alliance, under the leadership of Dr. Peter Daszak, D-A-S-Z-A-K, D-A-S-Z-A-K, otherwise known as the DEVIL, use U.S. taxpayer dollars to facilitate dangerous gain-of-function research in Wuhan. After the Select Subcommittee released evidence of EcoHealth violating the terms of the National Institutes of Health grant, the Department of Health and Human Services commenced official debarment proceedings and suspended all funding to EcoHealth. New evidence also shows that the Justice Department opened an investigation into EcoHealth's pandemic-era activities. These are all findings of the U.S. government. This isn't a charge or an accusation. These are the findings. NIH's procedures for funding and overseeing potentially dangerous research are deficient, unreliable, and pose a serious threat to both public health and national security. Further, NIH, National Institute of Health, fostered an environment that promoted evading federal record-keeping laws.
Wow.
As seen through the actions of Dr. David Morris and the FOIA lady, Marge Moore.
That right there is important.
Very important. And could be
evading federal record.
Could be the basis for indictments, or should be the basis for
There's
indictments.
a reason why they're invading federal record keeping. There's a reason for that. You know, they have something in their mind that they know they're doing.
It's a cover-up, yeah.
Right, they know that something's wrong. Okay, go on.
The next finding, the Biden administration's HHS, Health and Human Services, engaged in a multi-year campaign of delay, confusion, and non-responsiveness in an attempt to obstruct the Select Subcommittee's investigation and hide evidence that would incriminate or embarrass senior public health officials like Fauci. It appears that HHS even intentionally under-resourced its component that responds to legislative oversight requests. Intentionally.
Again, more of this. So are they in on it, or they're just trying to protect their buddies?
They were in on it.
Right.
They got the money. EcoHealth obstruction. EcoHealth President Dr. Peter Zastak, who I've called the devil, obstructed the Select Committee's investigation by providing publicly available information, instructing his staff to reduce the scope and pace of the productions and doctoring documents before they became public. Further, Dr. Daszak provided false statements to Congress. David Morris, Fauci's senior advisor, deliberately obstructed the subcommittee investigation and lied to Congress on multiple occasions, unlawfully deleting federal COVID-19 records and shared non-public information at the NIH grant process.
Now, hold on. I have to ask, approximately, circa with this, like when were they doing this?
Well,
in the middle of the COVID?
No,
while the investigation?
At the beginning, well, the investigation was toward the end of COVID, 2013.
I'm just curious when they're doing all this.
But the precursor, the acts they were covering up, were the minute COVID started.
Right.
They knew when COVID started, OSH.
Yeah. I almost said it. Get the beat button
the
ready.
The stuff that we've been making got out somehow, leak or deliberate, and it's all over the world, and everybody's blaming you.
Right.
So they had to cover it up.
Right. All right.
New York obstruction.
Oh boy.
New York's executive office, represented by Hochul, redacted documents, offered numerous illegitimate privilege claims, and withheld thousands of documents without a legal basis to obstruct the subcommittee's investigation into Cuomo's pandemic-era failures. And this guy wants to be mayor of New York.
Yeah, horrible. And what has he got? 50%? Oh, forget it. Yeah. That's like
World Health Organization. The WHO's response to the WHO's response to COVID-19 pandemic was an abject failure because it caved into pressure from Chinese Communist Party and placed China's political interests ahead of its international duties. Further, the WHO's newest effort to solve the problems exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic via pandemic treaty may harm the U.S. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Right.
Social distancing. The 6 feet apart social distancing recommendation, which shut down schools and small businesses across the country, was arbitrary and not based in science. Fauci testified that the guidance, quote, sort of just appeared.
Yeah.
And listen to the following. Turn the volume up on your radio. Mask mandates. There was no conclusive evidence that masks effectively protected Americans from COVID-19. Public health officials flip-flopped on the efficacy of masks without providing Americans specific data, causing a massive uptake in public distrust. Lockdowns, which stopped kids from getting an education, stopped kids from going out for teams, put businesses into the red, caused huge layoffs and tremendous pain. Prolonged lockdowns caused immeasurable harm to not only the U.S. economy, but to the mental and physical health of Americans, with a particular negative effect on younger citizens. Rather than prioritizing the protection of the most vulnerable populations, federal and state policies forced millions of Americans to forego crucial elements of a healthy and fiscally sound life.
Hold on, one thing right there. The one thing that we're going to gain from this, the Republicans, is that a lot of these kids can't stand the Democrats now because with the lockdown and they couldn't get scholarships. So now those kids are now 25, 30 years old.
Yep.
They're changing.
They're reaping the consequences of it.
Yeah.
This is still the White House speaking. New York pandemic failures. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's March 25th order, which forced nursing homes to accept COVID-19 positive patients, was, quote, medical malpractice, unquote. Evidence shows that Cuomo and his administration worked to cover up the tragic aftermath of their policy decisions in an apparent effort to shield themselves from accountability. This is the guy who wants to be a mayor.
Yeah, right.
Let me read that again. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo's March 25th order, which forced nursing homes to accept COVID-19 positive patients, was medical malpractice. And evidence shows that Cuomo worked to cover up the tragic aftermath of his policy decisions.
Now, to repeat this, Gus, I hate to keep repeating myself. Last week I mentioned it also. And they had the ship on the Hudson, the medical ship, and the Jacob Javits Center.
They were empty.
And they were empty. There was, I think, if I remember, and I think this number's right, there were 24 people on the ship and Javits, something like. I don't even think there was.
And the capacity was 3,000.
3,000 at Javits, and I think 2,400 on the ship, something to that. I don't remember if my numbers are exact.
And Cuomo said that he was moving people out of the hospitals into the nursing homes because there were too many people in the hospitals and he couldn't provide care for people that
Exactly.
came in. And the two hospital ship and the Javits Center were totally empty.
And not only that, nobody could go in and see grandma dying with this COVID thing, or their parents or their mother and father. They couldn't go to the hospitals and visit. That also.
It was horrible.
They really just made up a lot of crap.
And genocide. They killed thousands of old people in nursing homes.
That probably would not have happened if he didn't send them in.
Yeah.
Horrible. This is the guy that wants to be.
This continues the White House release. COVID-19 misinformation. Remember Cuomo's on-TV briefings?
Yeah.
Public health officials often misled the American people through conflicted messaging, knee-jerk reactions, and a lack of transparency. Most egregiously, the federal government demonized, remember the knocking Trump?
Yeah.
Alternate treatments and disfavored narratives, such as the lab leak theory, in a shameful effort to coerce the American people's health decisions. When these efforts failed, the Biden administration resorted to outright censorship, coercing and colluding with the world's largest media companies to censor all COVID-19 related dissent. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I mean, what a finding by the government. Good God. I mean, this deserves to be one of the seminal documents of American history.
It really is. So where do you think they're going at this point with this?
They were negotiating a pandemic treaty at the World Health Organization. And Trump not only pulled out of the organization, he banned Americans from cooperating with the study. Now the WHO has announced that its member organizations have reached a pandemic agreement without the United States. After more than 3 years of intensive negotiations, the director of WHO hailed the decision, saying it would make the world safer and demonstrate that multilateralism is alive and well, and that in our divided world, nations can still work together to find common ground.
Yeah.
The treaty notably includes a provision to guarantee that countries share critical virus samples, receive any resulting medical tests, medicines, and vaccines, with the World Health Organization keeping 20% of the products to ensure that poorer countries get supplies. Well, that's okay. Negotiations are going to continue. But the countries are legally bound by previous treaty to report any outbreak, including, and many did not, with the Ebola and other outbreaks. Under this proposal, however, and this was because of the outcry of people like you and me, under the proposed treaty, countries will have their own sovereignty to deal with public health issues within their borders. Quote, nothing in the draft agreement shall be interpreted as providing WHO any authority to direct, order, alter, or prescribe national laws or policies, or mandate states to take specific actions, such as ban or accept travelers, impose vaccination requirements, or therapeutic or diagnostic measures, or to implement lockdowns.
And that's exactly what the opposite of what they wanted to do 2 years ago.
That's why we did this.
Right.
Just to trace the history of this story, because Doug and I have been very involved in this.
And we only have a minute left.
We first raised this thing last year when the treaty was being negotiated. And we raised holy hell about it. I had several conversations with candidate Donald Trump about it, and he made several statements which he's now implementing to stop this treaty. But we worked like hell to get the fact that this treaty does not allow any order or prescribe national laws or policies or mandate specific actions to ban or accept travelers, impose vaccination requirements, or diagnostic or therapeutic measures, or to implement lockdowns.
Yeah, martial law type of thing.
Yeah.
And Biden was about to sign this thing on a Wednesday.
Sure
remember?
was.
We were like freaking out.
U.S. negotiators left the discussions after Trump began a year-long process of removing the U.S. from the UN agency when he took office in January. Trump issued an executive order to leave the WHO, citing its mishandling of the COVID-19 epidemic that arose out of Wuhan, China, and other global crises, as well as an inability to adopt reforms and to reform China's inappropriate political influence. In his order, Trump directed Rubio to cease negotiations on the pandemic treaty and emphasized that such agreements and amendments will have no binding force on the United States. Federal health officials are also barred from partaking in the talks with WHO. During COVID-19 research, U.S.-based research and development produced several widely used vaccines. So, eureka.
Yeah, right.
The good guys just won.
And you know he's going to put together a team to do it himself.
Yeah.
All right, when we get back, we're going to talk about deportations.
And Boasberg, that stupid judge, gives up.
Bloatberg.
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
Start with Joseph. Let's go to Joseph in where? Fairfield.
Fairfield.
Hi, Joseph.
Hello, Joe.
Joseph?
Hey, Joe. Maybe he's not there.
Okay. So let's go to Rick in New Jersey. Hi, Rick.
What's this letter you got, Rick?
Excuse me?
You got a letter we hear.
Yes, I have a very interesting letter that my grandmother or my great-grandmother saved. It's from a Joseph M. Callahan, who was a county clerk in 1919. I found out 8 years later he was a Supreme Court justice. Anyway, the letter is to a Dr. Christian.
What's that, Joseph Callahan?
Joseph M. Callahan.
He was a law partner of my father's father's firm.
No way.
Before my father joined it. Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay.
Go on, Joe.
Okay, so the letter is to the superintendent, New York State Reformatory in Elmira, New York, or Elmira.
Right.
I am very much interested in aiding the bearer to see one Lawrence Cuomo, who is confined in your institution, having been transferred there on or about May 26, 1919. I will greatly appreciate any courtesy extended, blah, 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 Joseph M. Callahan.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if this is a relation to
we don't
Marion
know.
or Andrew Cuomo, but I would imagine it is.
Okay, let's go to Sandra in New Jersey.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi, happy Passover, happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about Fauci. First of all, I'll never get over him. I think he murdered my mother and millions of other people. And the Beagles, but get a load of what I learned this week about him. You know how we have dogs in the hospitals to calm down the patients?
Yes.
They now have this beautiful service in the airports because people are anxious when they have to fly. So they have these service dogs in airports to calm people down.
Ah,
you
puppies.
know that horrible man, Fauci, is trying to terminate this beautiful thing, saying that dogs and other animals are dirty, they spread diseases, you shouldn't pet them, you shouldn't touch them. He is a sick man, and you know where he should go? I don't want to say.
Don't say, because we all know.
But let's just be clear what Fauci did. The U.S. government funded gain-of-function research, and the Wuhan lab was among the recipients of that funding. And it may well have been U.S. money that funded the gain-of-function research that created the virus that caused this horrible plague. And then Fauci knew what he'd done, and he and Peter Daszak, the director of the agency who provided the funding, covered it up, deleted documents, destroyed documents to hide their role.
Right there.
Unbelievable.
Says so much. All right, let's go to Steve in Brooklyn. I wanted to talk about the medical ship. I'm just curious.
Yes,
the real number.
To remind you who I was. I'm the guy that suggested the interstate water pumping system along
Yep.
the interstate road system.
Yep.
But I'm calling about exactly what you were talking about a few minutes ago. During the height of the epidemic, I called into Rudy Giuliani's show and suggested that we had the Intrepid aircraft carrier right in the Hudson.
Right.
And it was set up to hold about 3,000 people, had bunk beds already. Heavy medical equipment could go on the elevator they had for lifting aircraft.
Sure.
It was already moored in the hospital. So after you're getting the picture.
Yes, got
Rudy
it.
said to me he thought that was the best idea he had heard during the whole period of the epidemic then, when we were still having respirators.
Yeah.
And I called up Cuomo's office, and I called up de Blasio's office at the time, and suggested this and said on their voicemails, or whatever they had, I even got one representative, is thank you for your interest. Nobody ever responded. They didn't even need the comfort ship because the aircraft carrier Intrepid had food preparation through their galley.
Right.
And they were already moored. Ambulances could come up there, and medevac helicopters could land on an aircraft carrier.
Right. Very good.
Well, thank you for your call.
That was something.
A couple of years late, and it's too bad nobody listened to you.
Yeah. Well, he called Rudy back then.
A lot of graves because of that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyway, Boasberg gives up, thank God. The federal judge on Friday said he cannot stop deportations under the Alien Enemies Act, although the Supreme Court has halted deportations for now. U.S. District Court Judge James Bloatberg, I called him, Bloatisberg, said he could not grant the American Civil Liberties Union an emergency order. It wanted to stop deportation. Oh, poor boy. The ACLU wanted to force the administration to give everyone scheduled to be deported 30 days to challenge the proceedings. What a shame. So the Supreme Court has ordered the Trump administration to pause the deportation of the group of alleged Venezuelan gang members. The men are being held in detention in North Texas under an 18th century wartime law, and a civil liberties group has sued the government, saying they have not had a chance to contest their case in court. Donald Trump has sent accused Venezuelan gang members of the notorious mega jail in El Salvador, invoking the 1798 Alien Enemies Act, which gives the president power to order the detention and deportation of natives or citizens of enemy nations without usual process.
The background here is that the hoops that the government has to jump through about deporting someone are significant, and they delay the deportations. The Alien Enemies Act that was passed in 1798 as war with France loomed provided an expedited procedure where the government could throw aliens out of the country, people who were not citizens. And it was used several times then. It was used extensively in World War II
with the Japanese
to intern the Japanese, which was horribly unjust and terrible. And now it's being used very constructively to make sure that these MS-13 gang members are deported and thrown the hell out of the country. These are folks who went into the housing projects in Aurora, Colorado, and at gunpoint forced the residents to evacuate. They behead people, they torture people, and we should get rid of them. And they have no right to be here. They're here illegally. They have no legal standing here, and they should be thrown the hell out, both of court and of the country. One of the things that Biden did that was incredible was he said that you can't just come in over the border. That's getting a little crowded, and it's bad for me because of the photo ops. So what he said was that he passed an emergency parole law that mentioned 4 specific countries,
right?
Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. And they were granted the ability to come into the country illegally. And what Trump did is to try to suspend that. And a U.S. District Court judge said they can stay in the U.S. and pursue immigration benefits. Homeland Security cannot revoke their parole status. And she said, while Trump is correct that the secretary of his cabinet member has broad discretion in this area, the conclusion that his actions are wholly shielded from judicial review is incorrect. I can't wait for that to be appealed. I can't wait for her to be reversed. And I think she will be reversed. And this means that 530,000 illegal immigrants who were flown into the United States at your expense from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela are going to have to turn around and go home.
Bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, when we come back, what do we got? We're going to talk about the Dems to attack
deportation. The Dems are saying that they're attacking Trump over the deportations. Talk about putting your head in a noose. Welcome back to the misnamed Dick Morris Show. It's really the Dick Morris and Doug Depierro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. Here, Doug.
So now I have to talk because my name is on the bill, right? Okay. So anyway, this is a fight. They're attacking the deportation stuff.
Yeah, but this is Obama's campaign manager.
Right. This is
who said that Democrats shouldn't be afraid of attacking the Republican deportations.
Dan Pfeiffer. The consequences of turning a blind eye to truly dangerous, immoral, unconstitutional conduct for the Trump administration is worse than picking a fight on an issue that Trump might have some strength on.
I mean, this is horrible. What he's saying is that Democrats should make a key issue out of the deportations. 90% of the country supports the deportations. And when there are occasional instances where the person they're deporting may be a citizen and may be based on evidence from his wife that he abused her, and on evidence from law enforcement that he's involved in a gang, American people basically say, get out of our country. You're not a citizen, you're not entitled to be here, and we don't want you. So, and now he wants to make this a campaign issue.
And that's all he's doing.
Well, Trump has reclassified 50,000 government workers, making it easier to fire them. Go, Lex.
I ain't gonna work on Maggie's farm no more. No, I ain't gonna work on Maggie's farm no more.
President Donald Trump announced a new rule Friday, reclassifying thousands of career government employees as at-will employees. That is not guaranteed a job by the civil service law.
Is that what that means, at will?
Yeah. That would make it significantly easier to fire them. At will says, I'm here as long as you want me. There's no requirement that you have me.
Good. Do your job. Do a good job, and we'll keep you.
The rule stems from a day one executive order by Trump that directed the Office of Personnel Management to issue new civil service regulations for all career government employees. Not career anymore. Trump took similar action during the first term, reclassifying government employees as Schedule F and stripping them of civil service protections. Biden went on to rescind it, and now Trump is reinstating it. Trump said this is common sense and will allow the federal government to finally be run like a business. We must root out corruption and implement accountability in our federal workforce. The White House estimates that approximately 50,000 government employees will now be recategorized as at will, which would allow them to be terminated for poor performance, misconduct, corruption, or subversion of presidential directives.
Isn't that the way it's supposed to be in business?
Isn't that the way you and I work?
Yeah. You throw me out when you're no good, and I throw you out sometimes. Right. Sometimes, not really.
Trump administration, Biden declared war on coal. And coal, it's an asset worth $5 trillion. And the U.S. is the Saudi Arabia of coal, with 500 years of this valuable resource that helped build our country. Coal was once a dirty resource that caused unhealthy air pollution. Today, America has the cleanest coal in the world. Under Biden, coal plants were closed down and thousands of miners were put out of work. Biden said they could become computer coders. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Meanwhile, China has continued to build scores of high-polluting coal plants.
Right, exactly.
Even as they pretend to care so much about climate change.
Isn't that?
And now Trump is loosening the restrictions on coal plants.
You know, it's funny that what did Biden say? They can be computer coders. I say that about not scoring baseball or sports for the little kids. Oh, we don't want to offend a kid. Oh, he dropped the ball. Maybe he goes home and he becomes an artist, or he writes a book, or something else. He knits. You don't have to be a baseball player.
Now we can talk about the state that is probably the worst state in the United States, Delaware. Delaware, it's tiny. It's one congressional district, about 800,000 people. And it's responsible for Joe Biden and a lot of other lousy politicians.
Joe Biden.
But it is fundamentally a corrupt state. It's run like a candy store, and everybody's related to everybody else, and they have their own laws that they pass to benefit companies that they like. So the companies are leaving now. AMC Networks, the owner of AMC Channel, is planning to move its corporate domicile from Delaware to Nevada. The AMC News hit days after Madison Square Garden Entertainment announced it was planning to leave Delaware. 20 other major companies in the last year have left Delaware. For decades, Delaware had attracted businesses for its well-established legal framework and court system. But that's changed as the state's reputation as a neutral legal playing ground has fallen to the wayside with recent court rulings. A Delaware judge nullified a $56 billion compensation package for Elon Musk, prompting him to move both of his companies to Texas. The compensation package was approved by Tesla shareholders twice, based on Musk hitting benchmarks which saw the company's value zoom to over $1 trillion. But the Delaware official said the compensation was too rich, and she compensated the lawyers who sued Musk $400 million for their legal fees. At issue for Musk CEOs and other Fortune 500 companies and entrepreneurs across the nation is that the Delaware Court of Chancery has become a haven for shareholder lawsuits and left-leaning judicial activism. After the ruling, Musk posted on X, "Never incorporate your company in Delaware." The ruling has triggered a wave of corporate exits and raised questions about Delaware's business-friendly environment. Following Musk's move, Pershing Square Capital Management founder Bill Ackman announced in February that his firm would move to Nevada. Dropbox followed suit, finalizing its move earlier this month. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, and Walmart are also considering relocating to Texas or another state. In March, the nation's largest mall owner, Simon Property Group, announced that it was quitting Delaware.
Wow.
And last year, former Attorney General William Barr wrote in the Wall Street Journal that everybody should leave Delaware because it was embracing far-left environmental and social consequences and policies.
Wow, they're going to die.
The message for this is get out of Delaware. Get out of Delaware.
Hey, how come when Trump had to pay $88 million to that woman, for defamation? I wasn't even defamation.
Yeah, no, that was in Georgia, actually.
I thought that was New York. Wasn't that the woman that was in the Bergdorf?
Yeah, it was in New York.
In Bergdorf?
Yeah, you're right.
$88 million. That wasn't a ridiculous amount of money. And
yeah,
they didn't,
but the difference is that, these are people who really lived in New York, the plaintiff and the defendant.
Right.
In Delaware, these are companies that choose to incorporate in Delaware.
Got it.
Because it's got good tax policies. And they don't realize that when they're doing that, they're putting themselves under the laws of a communist country.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Be clear. When we come back, we're going to talk about my new non-favorite college, Harvard.
All right. Beautiful.
So, Lux, let's hear it.
It's on 16, the Harvard thing. All right.
Harvard University said it will not comply with Trump's demands aimed at curtailing anti-Semitism on campus, potentially putting billions in federal contracts and grants at risk. Harvard said no government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue.
No, you don't have to dictate. I'm just not going to give you any more money.
No, they should be. They shouldn't be able to exclude Jews or to discriminate against Jews, whether we give them money or not.
No, but that's the only way to go about it.
No, you can. There's a law that says you can't discriminate, and Harvard can't discriminate. Nobody can. Doesn't matter if you're public or private.
Good.
So in March, the Trump administration warned it was looking at $256 million in federal contracts, as well as $8.7 billion in multi-year commitments, claiming that Harvard had failed to take meaningful action to root out anti-Semitism. The Ivy League was ordered to implement multiple changes to maintain its financial relationship with the federal government. Some of the reforms, including dismantling all diversity, equity, inclusion programs, DEI, stepping up its admission screening of international students to prevent admitting students hostile to American values and stop them from admitting students supportive of terrorism or anti-Semitism. Harvard was also ordered to make admissions decisions based on merit alone and cease all preferences based on race, color, national origin, or proxies thereof. What the hell is wrong with that? Harvard has to obey the law, not let anyone in who's going to be a terrorist, and not discriminate against any group or for any group. Columbia University was given a similar set of demands last month, which it largely agreed to. Trump has taken the extraordinary step of asking the IRS to revoke Harvard's tax-exempt status. This is a nuclear weapon. What is Harvard's tax-exempt status? Many colleges are exempt from paying federal income and property taxes, so donors can deduct any financial contributions, a major draw for colleges to attract big donors. The Trump administration's rationale is tax-exempt status is reserved for religious, charitable, and educational groups, but they are not allowed to participate in political activity. Harvard argues that this violates the First Amendment. The school argues it's free to develop its own policies and government interference would be inappropriate. Harvard's the wealthiest university in the world. Can it handle losing tax benefits? It has a $50 billion endowment, but 70% of the funds are earmarked for specific programs by donors and can't legally be used for unrelated purposes. But 20%, so that's $1 billion, is unrestricted and can plug budget holes. If the administration succeeds in yanking Harvard's tax-exempt status, which would entail a lengthy legal fight, the school could owe taxes on that endowment and its large real estate holdings. So now we have to wait and see what the IRS decides. CNN says the decision is expected soon. Trump has already frozen more than $2 billion in grants and contracts for Harvard. Donald Trump said that the institution should receive no more federal funding and that it can no longer be considered a decent place of learning. He called Harvard a joke. One day after he announced he would freeze $2.2 billion in grants because it refused to comply with its demands on hiring, curriculum, and admissions. Particularly, Trump criticized the hiring of New York former Mayor Bill de Blasio.
The bozo.
And Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot, both Democrats as instructors. He called them the worst and most incompetent mayors in the history of our country.
Beetlejuice.
These two radical left-wing fools left behind two cities that will take years to recover from their incompetence and evil, he said. He accused Harvard of hiring almost all woke, radical left idiots and bird brains. Those are technical terms.
I love this guy.
And said they're only capable of teaching failure to our students and so-called future leaders.
You know, Dick, not to get off the subject too much, but I've told you that quite a few times in Mar-a-Lago. I was talking to him, and that's the way he talks. He just says, this friggin' guy. I'm saying friggin', but it's something else. Yeah, and I said back to him one day, he was talking about Biden. He goes, I go, he is a jack up. And he goes, you're right, he is. And we were going back and forth like two New Yorkers. And the Secret Service looked at me, and Trump had his back to the Secret Service. And they just nodded their head like, I can't believe he's talking to the president like that. I talked to him like a regular guy.
Yep.
Anyway, that's it. He's right. Beetlejuice.
So this is really a war on Harvard. and he's gutsy for taking on the leading academic institution in America, perhaps in the world. And by threatening their tax-exempt status and stopping government programs from working with Harvard, he really is imposing serious penalties on the university. Take decades for the university to recover.
Get him in the wallet.
And his actions are very, very strong and potentially deadly for them. It's absolutely incredible that he's doing that. Good for him.
Right on, Mr. President.
Yep.
You the man. He is the man.
Yep.
So people don't believe me sometimes when I talk about him and how I talked with him, but I always thought he was just a regular guy to me. Like, he was. He would walk around. He would say, "Hey, can you paint this? Can you do that?" I go, "Sure. What do you need?" And then he would ask me, "What do you think? Do you think I should leave that little strip of wood over there, or should I put it marble?" And I would have a conversation with him.
One of the things that he's doing to Harvard is the Department of Homeland Security is threatening to remove Harvard University's ability to enroll foreign students if it does not give the agency information about its student visa holders' illegal and violent activities. Christine O.M., Homeland Security Secretary, sent a letter to Harvard warning that the school did not send over requested records by April 30th. It would lose its student and exchange visitor program certification after they've canceled DHS grants. Harvard is bending the knee to anti-Semitism, driven by its spineless leadership, and offers a cesspool of extremist riots and threatens our national security, Noem said. With anti-American, pro-Hamas ideology poisoning its campuses and its classrooms, Harvard's position as a top institution of higher learning is a distant memory. Americans demand more from universities entrusted with taxpayer dollars. So this is really war, and Trump has a lot of guts to fight it, and it's damned important.
You know what I feel this is, Dick? This is the reversal of the Long March.
Exactly.
Going to the schools 50 years ago, from high school to colleges, and indoctrinating all of these kids who now become big shots in companies, whether they're CEOs or owners of companies, and they become this liberal. And you talked about it. What, Marcuse, was it?
Herbert Marcuse, the Marxist professor who really developed the New Left ideology, quoted Mao, who went through a long march, which was his retreat from southern China to northern China to continue his civil war. And 85,000 soldiers marched, some barefoot through the snow in that march. And he said that leftists in the U.S. and communists need to do their own long march through our institutions and go to each one and work on inculcating them with left-wing ideology. And schools and universities were high up on his list.
And this now is Kristi Noem and Trump reversing that. He wanted to put together a school too, a college, right? What was it called?
Yeah, the American Academy.
Right.
We'll talk about that when it happens.
Right.
But meantime, the faculty senates in the Big Ten Academic Alliance are creating a mutual defense pact among the colleges to fight against Trump's ongoing attacks on higher education. The faculty senate of Rutgers began the initiative, passing a resolution April 6th to establish the compact among the Big Ten's 18 campuses. Be it resolved that the Rutgers University Senate urges the president of Rutgers University to formally propose and help establish a mutual academic defense contract among all members of the Big Ten Academic Alliance. So they're all going to band together and fight against Trump. Ruck, guys. Trump is right. He has the complete authority to do that. He can revoke this money anytime he wants. And they should be thankful that all he's doing is revoking their funding, not threatening to lock them up for violating the civil rights of Jewish students.
I think that's horrible what they're doing. I saw some people protesting with the pro-Palestinian, and they had no idea what they were talking about. And I even went by and said, Trump, and they didn't even hear me. They were like, yay.
Well, what's going on here is that the Palestinians have infiltrated American colleges using scholarship programs and money from American donors.
Right.
And the idea is to make American colleges sort of branch offices of the Gaza Strip and populate them with Palestinian students who can raise hell.
It's so hard to believe that,
And well, I went to Columbia, and they did that there
back then.
Yeah,
Wow.
but this is foreign, and what they're doing is really infiltrating colleges. Somebody said the other day, I don't know if it's true, that a third of Harvard students are from out of the country. But the point is that they, as their tuitions became crazily high, they imported a lot of students from abroad, and it became a very important thing for them to do. And with it has come this leftist ideology that's taken over our college campuses. And it is very important that Trump fight against this and stop this trend from continuing.
No, I think
when we come back,
we got a break.
We'll
coming
talk
up.
about Trump closer to home, cutting NPR and PBS and a bunch of good people.
What a shame.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug Depierro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. Doug?
So we got some more budget cuts, Trump, my man. The White House is preparing a rescission package that will seek to have Congress cut back more than $9 billion in approved funding through cuts to public broadcasting. The U.S. Agency for International Development said. A White House official confirmed to the Hill the package will be sent to Congress when lawmakers return from Easter recess in April 28. The package requests to eliminate $9 billion in spending, the officials said. That includes money for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which oversees PBS and NPR, money for USAID and agencies like in the U.S. So cutting that back is very good, right?
Yeah. So why don't we ask those agencies to fund themselves by private contributions?
Right.
What's magic about government money, except that you don't have to work for it? And there's no reason why they can't be funded. Already about 80 or 90% of NPR, I think, is privately financed.
What percent? What'd you say?
80 or 90 of NPR is private money.
Wow.
So cut off the federal subsidy.
Right.
Stop
Let's see how they do.
From flowing.
Let's see how the left people fund them, see what they do. And now Sarah Palin, I love her, fighting the left. A retrial is set to begin Monday for Palin's libel lawsuit, claiming the New York Times libeled her in an editorial 8 years ago. The one-time Republican vice presidential candidate and ex-governor of Alaska gets another chance to prove to a federal jury that the newspaper defamed her with the 2017 editorial, falsely linking her campaign rhetoric to a mass shooting. I remember that. Palin said it damaged her reputation and career. The Times has acknowledged the editorial was inaccurate, but said it quickly corrected an honest mistake. Well, a little too late, pal. A little late to the party. In restoring the lawsuit, the Second Circuit said the dismissal ruling improperly intruded on jury's work. It also cited flaws in the trial, saying there was erroneous exclusion of evidence and inaccurate jury instruction and an erroneous response to a question from the jury. So there you go. So good for her.
So look at Trump. He's taking on Harvard, the New York Times, very seriously going after the institutions that have anchored the left in control of the establishment in the United States.
And then you got her going after...
Well, she's suing with the New York Times.
I think, as I said a couple of times, after he was elected, just the whole feeling, the whole mindset of conservative people. They felt a little stronger. They said they felt they had a little more backing. You know, a lot of people didn't have a Trump sticker on the car or thing because they would get ridiculed or whatever. Now, not so bad. You know, people are proud now.
But the facts of this Sarah Palin lawsuit are really something. Gabrielle Giffords was a congresswoman from Arizona, and she was a straight conservative. And after she was shot, not killed, but shot, the New York Times published an editorial blaming Sarah Palin for it.
Oh, right.
And they even said that Palin issued a piece of campaign literature with a rifle sight with Gabrielle Giffords in the sights, and said that this constitute, saying, take aim at Gabrielle Gifford, give us money to defeat her.
Right.
And they said that this was tantamount to urging people to shoot her and assassinate her. And they said that, therefore, she's to blame for the shooting. And Gifford survived, thank God. But maybe the New York Times did not. And they admitted that this was a mistake. She had not, in fact, urged anybody to shoot anybody. And putting them in the sights was not about guns. It was about giving money. So the court threw it out prematurely, and let's see if Sarah Palin can win that case.
Good for her.
But that will be a big, big deal if it works.
You know, a lot of people said that she wasn't smart, and this. I don't think so. I watched her at a rally, and a heckler got on her, and she went at him, and she was pretty sharp.
Yeah,
the way she went
she
at
is.
him. I didn't see her to be dumb, because she said she could see a last Russia from her back windows, whatever she said, something to that effect. You know, get out of here.
Yeah,
just get him. All right, Dick, what do you got here?
Well, that's going on. AOC is busy touring the country with Bernie Sanders.
with a private jet, and they're all pitching of that. Oh,
yeah,
you're driving.
That's right.
You're flying a private jet.
I have been saying from the date of the election that the Democrats are going to move to the left. They always do. Mm-hmm. Even when you think they'd move to the right or the center after they lose an election.
Right, to tune up their base and get it right again.
Yeah, but they moved to the left.
Right.
After Humphrey lost to Nixon, the next candidate the Democrats nominated was McGovern, who got clobbered. And after,
let me ask you, I have to ask, I don't mean to interrupt you in the middle of it, but do they move to the left because they had so much vigor when they were working with the left? Like right now, the crazy left, they're so loud and they're so out there. Is that the reason that they feel strong, even though they're not in numbers? They're not in numbers.
That's part of it. But the big thing is that in their primaries, which determine what a party's about, the moderates leave. You probably know a lot of people who were Democrats and now have left.
Right.
And they now say they're independent. Some even say they're conservative. Some
so they have no place to go but for the left.
Exactly.
Wow.
And you have their primaries. And the left, instead of constituting 40% of the vote, is 60%.
Okay, so now they're leaving. The people in Congress or in government, they're leaving that are moderates, right? But still, people have to vote the really crazies into that
party.
Well,
because there are a lot of crazies, but the sane ones have left the Democratic
So
Party.
there's not even primaries with sane people. They're just all...
Primaries are not conducted among all voters.
Right.
Only people who say, I'm registered in this party.
Right.
Only people that are with that party. And as that party moves further to the left, and fewer and fewer moderates are part of it,
right,
and more extremists are part of it, the extremists are going to win the primaries.
There you go.
And it becomes a self-defeating cycle. In 1980, as I was saying, Ronald Reagan defeated Jimmy Carter, and the Democrats responded by nominating Mondale and Dukakis in the next two elections until they finally lost enough that they got Sandy with Clinton.
Right.
So now AOC is moving determinedly, and I think she's going to get the Democratic nomination in 28.
So.
She's helping draw massive crowds across the country as part of a fighting oligarchy tour with Sanders. The two progressives have been crisscrossing the country and holding rallies in cities, most recently generating crowd sizes of tens of thousands in Salt Lake City and L.A. Excitement around the tour has led to questions about AOC's future amid signs of frustration with Democratic Party leadership. She represents the next generation of Democratic politics, said one politician. I think she's been saying tacitly or explicitly that there needs to be a generational shift in the party's leadership, and it's a message to voters. And they've been traveling across the country in Tucson, Denver, Tampa, and Idaho. The tour was billed as hitting the road to have real discussions across America on how we move forward to take on the oligarchs and corporate interests who have so much power and influence over the country. Ocasio-Cortez is often featured at these events, which the Sanders team says have attracted 20,000 inside a venue in Salt Lake City and many thousands more in Los Angeles. And many Democrats want their party to move to the left and are backing the aggressive stand taken by Sanders and AOC.
You're not talking about the voters. You're talking about...
Well, I am. The Democratic voters, yeah. 50% of Democrats want their party to move to the left. Wow. And 24 want it to stay the same, 18 to become more conservative. But this is of Democrats. So that sample size included a lot of moderates in the past who are now not part of it. You ask people, are you a Democrat? And tens of thousands, if not millions, would have said yes a year ago, and now they say no. So they're not asked. They're not in that sample. But the 50% of the people that remain say they want the party to become more liberal. Now, by contrast, only 40% said the Republicans should be more conservative, and 44% said it should remain the same. So 50% of Democrats want them to move to the left, and 24 stay the same. Among Republicans, 40 say move to the right, and 44 say the same. So, and in this tour, AOC has raised $9.6 million, more than double what she raised in her second highest quarter before that. She now has more than $8 million cash on hand. And Nate Silver, the prognosticator, says flatly that she will be the Democratic nominee in 28. The recent Yale University poll found AOC had the highest net favorability among Democrats, and put her in second place to Harris in a poll of who you'd like to run for president as a Democrat in 2028. Well, they're welcome to her.
Well,
and if she were nominated, it would bring about the most enormous win for the Republican Party that you could imagine.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about this quite a bit, and we've been constantly going back and forth. You wanted her to run 4 years ago, right? Didn't you?
Yeah.
Right. But
because I sensed this trend, and I said, wow, what an opportunity to destroy the Democratic Party.
So I'm thinking the only way, because I said this last week or a couple of weeks ago, that we're talking about 2 or 3 more election cycles, presidential, that the Dems aren't getting in. But they would have to get a real moderate guy that's sort of good look, girl, woman, person in there that's smart, attractive to everyone, and really is like a Donald Trump of the Democrats. That really would have to have a lot of force. Otherwise, they're not coming back.
Yeah, but
at least 2 more
a candidate
cycles.
That sounds like that will not make it out of the primary.
Right,
Why?
that's the thing, right.
They can't nominate anyone who would win.
So would
the
they have
election.
to just whittle away? It's got to kind of like they have to start dying away a little at a time?
Well, no, what happened in the 2 times the Democratic Party was totally captured by the left, 1972 and 1988.
Like you said.
And when that happened, they got massacred at the polls. And
So
then
they
4 years
basically
later, Bill Clinton came along and said, we can't win this way.
But basically, right now, they would just have to starve to death, basically.
Yeah.
They would get
They
the
have to
primary, people would throw them a bone, and then they would starve for 4 years. To get the primary, people throw them a bone, and then starve to death.
Yeah.
That's it. No one's going to win a primary, like I said, no one moderate.
Well,
big.
no, the left will win the primaries.
No, I'm saying no moderate,
It's gonna
strong.
win the
is
election.
gonna,
Yeah.
Oh, right. No, you're saying no moderate's going to win the primary on the left if there's a moderate person like a Clinton or a Kennedy, that type of
They have to get it out of the
system. Right, they would have to starve to death.
And eventually,
good for them.
At some point, sense dawns on them. After they lost badly with McGovern, they began to think about it, and they said, well, maybe we'll take a chance on a Southern governor, who's, after all, a conservative Democrat and all that.
Right,
so
get a real job.
Jimmy Carter.
Right.
And when Ed Muskie came along, a liberal from the North,
I kind of
they
remember
said,
him.
no, we too far left. And in 92, they said, we'll take a chance on the governor of Arkansas. Again, we'll go with the South. And when other candidates came along, Paul Tsongas and Harkin, who were leftists, the voters said, no, you're not going to win the election. We're not going to let you win the primary. And they nominated Clinton. And Clinton campaigned as the new Democrat and came out for the death penalty and executed somebody while he was running, condemned Sister Souljah for being racist, and really broke and said we have to end welfare as we know it, a line that I wrote from. And he appealed to the moderates. And that is what has to happen now. But it can't happen before the 20th election.
And they got to start.
The anger about Trump is too great.
Right.
The desire for revenge is too great. And the economy is doing really well.
Right.
And Trump is succeeding with these deportations.
So even people on the left are saying, I'm just going to lay back. The economy's doing well. They could have more money in their pocket. Even though they don't like Trump, they probably just shut up and sit back. You want me to go on to this next story?
27, yeah. The MSNBC.
MSNBC ratings down 57% since the election, down from 1.3 million to 660,000. Unbelievable. Anyway, Rubio closes down NewsGuard for anti-rights bias.
Yeah, what the establishment is doing is they're saying to advertisers, corporations, don't advertise, don't buy ads on Fox News, don't buy ads on WABC Radio,
right.
Don't buy ads on Newsmax, because they're too conservative, they're too right wing, and the marketing directors in those companies want the ads to work. They want to get a lot of people.
Right.
But they also are liberal. They want to be politically correct.
So
they don't want to be part of moving to the right.
And Rubio said, today it's my pleasure to announce the State Department has taken a crucial step towards keeping the president's promise to liberate American speech by abolishing forever the body formerly known as the Global Engagement Center, GEC, which has originally begun in 2011 as the Center for Strategic Counterterrorism Communications. It was tasked with countering extreme propaganda. In 2016, Obama administration moved to rebrand it as Global Engagement Center, broadening its scope to combat what it called foreign state and non-state propaganda and disinformation efforts. Critics say the shift turned a counterterrorism office into a tool for censoring political speech. Rubio particularly noted that the support for left-wing misinformation monitors like NewsGuard and GDI. Both groups received State Department grants and in turn have been targeting conservative media. Another entity received State Department dollars was NewsGuard, a company that rates the reliability of various websites, once again for the purpose of driving traffic and ad revenue away from those rated poorly, Rubio said. Conservatives have complained that advertising agencies are taking political sides by using NewsGuard to determine what outlets get ad revenue. In 3 comprehensive studies, the Media Research Center found NewsGuard consistently ranks conservative media outlets with lower ratings than liberal ones. With low ratings from NewsGuard, conservative media finds themselves blocked on browsers like Microsoft, and they see their search and social media traffic plummet and often get little revenue, ad revenue, from advertising agencies. Elon Musk has called this NewsGuard a scam, with legal expert Jonathan Turley adding its work is both censorship and blackmailing.
Blacklisting.
We got to go to a break.
Yeah, but that's all very important, and thank goodness Rubio's doing that.
Yes.
Because the strategy of the left is to starve Newsmax and Fox and ABC of revenue by getting corporate advertisers to cut them off. And it uses NewsGuard as a method of doing it. And NewsGuard was funded by the State Department, by the American government. Yeah. And now Rubio has cut off that funding, and they're no longer in business. They'll be in business, but won't be able to do what they've been doing.
It's the same mindset as, anyone that works for Trump. The leftist government went in, tried to sue them, and it just breaks them monetarily, just destroys them in the pocket. Same idea.
Same idea.
Just hurt them in the pocket or whatever they can.
When we come back, we're going to talk about the moderate Democrats. There are a few of them, and they're balking at Trump's Medicaid cuts. Trump is proposing these big tax cuts, re-upping his previous tax cuts and extending them to exempt tips and overtime pay and Social Security benefits and other stuff as part of tax cuts aimed at the middle class. And the Democrats were flummoxed about how to respond to it.
Flummoxed?
Flummoxed, yeah.
Okay.
Now they've figured out a strategy, and they think they have it. They're warning Republicans that they will not support the Trump tax cuts if they cut Medicaid benefits. And 12 Republicans in competitive districts signed a letter to Johnson warning him about that. Now, what went on is that when in 1965 Medicaid was passed, along with Medicare, and Medicaid was for poor people and old people in nursing homes, and Medicare was for old people. And for old people who were not poor, they bought health insurance. Since then, the Democrats have changed Medicaid 2 or 3 times. The big change was under Obama, where he promised universal health care for everybody with Obamacare, and it didn't work. Nobody would buy into it. And then he said, okay, I'm going to expand Medicaid so it, in effect, becomes universal health coverage. And then COVID hit, and Biden said, I got to put everybody on Medicaid. And he increased the federal share of Medicaid funding from 60%, it was historically 50%, up to 90%. And every state said, okay, we'll take that money and we'll use it to treat COVID patients. Then COVID went away, but the funding didn't. They kept it at those high levels. And as a result, the number of people on Medicaid has grown from an initial 20 million to pre-COVID 50 million to now 90 million. And this has become almost as big as Medicare in the federal budget. So what Trump is saying is, I'm going to bring it back to what it was before COVID. I'm going to get rid of the expansions that took place because of COVID. I'm going to restore it to a 50-50 federal-state match. And I'm going to, and as a result, we'll cut a lot of people off it. And we'll roll back the eligibility levels. Right now, previously you had to be in poverty to get on Medicaid if you weren't old. Under the Biden administration, you could earn 50% more than the poverty level, 25% more than the poverty level, and still qualify for Medicaid. Well, Trump is going to roll that back, and he's going to make sure that you have to be poor to get Medicaid. But he's not going to do it himself. What he's going to do is get the governors of the states to do it. Because he's simply going to say, I'm no longer going to reimburse Medicaid at 90%. You guys in the states are going to have to cough up 50 or 40% of the money. I'll give you 50 or 60% from Washington. And the governors aren't going to do it. They're going to say, hey, I don't want to destroy my own budget. I don't want to absolutely force a tax increase in my state. I want to get reelected occasionally.
Well, some will do it. There will be a couple.
Yeah, but the point is that most won't.
Right.
And that Trump will force the cuts in Medicaid, not by doing them himself, but by making the governors do them, by eliminating the free meal ticket.
He's kicking the can. He's kicking the can down the road.
He's just been very, very effective in that. I've been urging him to do that. Because there's no reason for him to take this rap himself. just cut back the reimbursement rate, and the Democratic governors will cut back the program for them.
Not so different from sending the abortion down to the states.
Yeah, that's
right. You know what I mean? He
that's
got
right.
himself off of that gig. Let the states deal with it. Now with this too. Unbelievable.
That's right.
And you talk about Mark Zuckerberg. After I read this, it's gonna be Zuckerberg. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg.
Well, talk about him.
What?
Talk about him.
What do you mean?
Mark Zuckerberg.
That's what I am.
Yeah.
That's what I am. Yeah, thank you. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg reportedly tried to cozy up to President Trump to slash a looming $30 billion antitrust lawsuit down to a paltry $450 million. Okay. Only for the scheme to blow up in his face. According to a report from the Wall Street Journal, Zuckerberg personally reached out to the head of the Federal Trade Commission in March to offer a laughable $450 million settlement. A mere 1.5 of what the government says Meta owes for years of monopolistic power grabs, particularly its shady acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp. Zuckerberg believed President Trump would have his back and try to cash in on his donations and political posturing to win favor with the president. Zuckerberg, infamous among conservatives for silencing dissent and manipulation online narratives in 2020. Donated $1 million to the Trump inauguration, met with Trump officials multiple times, and even instructed Meta to scale back content moderation, all in a bid to rebrand himself as a MAGA-friendly ally. But despite visiting Mar-a-Lago twice, attending Trump's inauguration in January, settling Trump's lawsuit for $25 million, and dumping millions into election-related PR, the Meta CEO couldn't buy his way out of this accountability. Zuckerberg, or now we could call him Zuckerberg, campaign culminated a desperate phone call to the FTC, Federal Trade Commission Chair Andrew Ferguson, offering a pitiful $450 million to settle the case. Ferguson, to his credit, didn't budge, calling the offer non-credible and reaffirming the agency's demand for at least $18 billion, and that from $30 billion, right? Originally $18 billion, and a binding consent decree.
Yeah, but
the trial proceeds as scheduled.
So Zuckerberg thought he could
Zuckerberg yeah.
thought he could palm them off with $500 million.
Right.
Paltry change.
But like
Zuckerberg said, no, I want $18 billion. And it's absolutely...
No, Ferguson said it.
Ferguson said it, yeah. And that shows that you can't buy Donald Trump.
But no, the $18 billion was a binding consent decree. That's not the whole thing, right?
No,
right?
that was...
$18 billion and a binding consent decree. What is that exactly?
Well, that they won't do certain things in the future.
Right.
But the point is that the federal government sued Zuckerberg for monopolistic practices and how he took over...
not TikTok, the other one.
No, Meta something.
Yeah.
Whatever. WhatsApp and Instagram.
Right, Instagram and WhatsApp.
And it was a serious lawsuit. And Zuckerberg thought he could make it go away by making nice on Donald Trump. So he visited Mar-a-Lago twice. He gave $1 million to the Trump committee.
Trump shook his hand. You're a nice guy. Thank you very much.
Posed for photos and all of that. And then the judge wouldn't back down. And the judge said, no, we're going for the the FTC said we're going for the full $18 billion. And it's just the classic story of a bribe that backfired.
That's like the ad you did for someone in South America where the political guy says, oh, vote for me. Here's a bag, a thing of fruit, and here's some stuff and food. Vote for me. And the wife said, yeah. She went inside, and the husband said, why'd you do that? Listen, he lied to me. I lied to him. Let's eat his food. We're not voting for him.
That's right. Okay, there's been a huge development now on school choice. Very, very important. And the reason I'm covering it so heavily is that it means the death of the teachers' union, which is the main financial bulwark of the Democratic Party. Let's hit it. So Texas has passed a law now passed the House that says that any student in Texas can get a government grant of $10,000 to go to a private church school or homeschooling. They don't have to go to the public schools. And the $10,000 comes right off of the budget of the public school and gets transferred to the school the student wants to attend.
So local budget.
No, not local budget. It goes out of the local budget and goes to the school. In other words, if you're attending the public school, the government can get $10,000 from the government, from the federal government.
Oh, the federal, okay.
To pay for you.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can't. And Texas is going to redirect that money to the school you choose. So you decide where that money goes. You vote with your feet or your child's feet.
Mm-hmm.
And they have now passed this and will result in massive numbers leaving the public school system.
Beautiful.
And massive numbers of teachers in the public school system probably getting laid off.
Beautiful.
When we come back, the Trump revolution hits the IRS. So much of what Trump is doing is not publicized, and one of the reasons we talk about him on this show is so you know about it. There was a guy named Gary Shipley who testified before Congress that Biden jumped through hoops to try to stop his son from getting indicted for tax crimes. And he worked like crazy at that. Now Trump says that the whistleblower should be appointed the deputy commissioner of the IRS. Put the whistleblower in charge of the agency. And while he's doing that, 25% of the IRS employees
I gotta go.
Have taken buyouts and plan to quit.
Bye-bye.
But the fun story is this
bye-bye.
new one, okay? Doug?
Oh, my God. Letitia James. I used to like that name, Letitia. Now I see it as let it in a jail, James. Letitia. Trump hits Letitia James with a criminal referral for mortgage fraud. This is great. The New York attorney Letitia James was hit with a federal criminal referral for instances of alleged mortgage fraud on Tuesday, according to the letter obtained by the Post.
This is going after the woman that went after Trump.
For saying that the Trump Tower was
worth... for a loan he repaid and was up on the up and up because he overstated the value of his property.
Right.
And the court didn't complain, the borrower didn't complain, but Letitia James did, and she tried to sock Trump with a verdict. Now it turns out that she was corrupt in getting her own financing for a mortgage.
She was shooting at a metal target and it bounced back and it's hitting her in the forehead. Federal Housing Finance Agency Director William Pult, is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Pult sent the missive to Attorney General Pam Bondi, a deputy AG Todd Blanche, allegedly that James had falsified records to get home loans for a property in Virginia that she claims was her principal residence in 23, while still serving as New York State prosecutor.
Yeah. She's Attorney General of New York.
Right.
And she submits a federal mortgage application saying she lives in Virginia.
But then she goes after Trump. That's really the part that's...
But wait a minute, there's more to this story.
Right. That occurred in... You want me to finish up? Yeah. That occurred in late August of 23, weeks before James began her civil fraud trial against Trump Organization over inflating the value of many of his properties, which ended in a $454 million judgment. In February of 2001, James also purchased a 5-family dwelling in Brooklyn, but has consistently misrepresented the same property as only having 4 units in both building permit applications and numerous mortgage documents applications, the letter noted. Pult attached several documents also showing that James purchased another property with her father as a co-signer, but falsely listed them as a pair, as a husband and wife. So her father, she was married to, I guess, who knows what that's about, in 1983.
Well, no, she wasn't married to him.
I know.
She put her father down as her husband.
I'm making a joke.
So his income would count.
That's unbelievable. While this was a long time ago, it raises serious concerns about the validity of Miss James' representation on mortgage applications, he wrote. The letter referred earlier media reports about reportedly falsifying her residence status to get a lower mortgage rate in Virginia and misrepresenting her 5-unit residence in Brooklyn that were first reported. James granted power of attorney to Shamise Thompson Hairston, a relative, to sign August 17, 23 document authorizing the purchase of the first property, according to legal filings reported by the outlet. She secured $218,000 mortgage to do so. Loan secured for this latter property could have reduced her mortgage interest rate by as much as 1% and had lower monthly payments under the Federal Home Assistance Modification Program, since it was listed as containing just 4 units instead of the 5 that it had. Miss James, go to jail James, for both properties listed above, appears to have falsified records in order to meet certain lending requirements. Oh, really? And receive favorable loan terms, he told Bondi and Blanche. What's his name? Told him that. That could amount to criminal charges including wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, and false statements to the financial institution, among others, Pult said. A criminal referral dropped the same day. James' office confirmed it was preliminary scrutinizing whether insider trading was in play regarding the 90-day pause President Trump put on reciprocal tariffs last week.
So this woman who
tried
to get Trump for a mortgage where he overstated his income to get the mortgage, but has paid it back fully, and the institution that he borrowed the money from continues to lend him money and likes him. And she's committed this massive mortgage fraud, listing her father as her husband, so his income counts.
Unbelievable.
And saying that she has five units when she really only has 4, so she could take extra rental income on her financial statement.
You should have used Karma song.
Yeah, right.
This is great.
Right.
Where are we going, Dick?
Well, this was something.
We got a couple of minutes.
Yep. Trump is imposing sanctions on Hamas. He's been doing that all the time, and he's imposed new sanctions on them over their use of human shields.
That's horrible.
That's when they take people and they put them in front of them and they say, if you're going to try and shoot me,
you got to get him
shoot
first.
him.
That's
and
what animals? The animals don't do that to their own.
Under Biden, the law was passed, but he never implemented it. And this comes at a time when Hamas is facing a financial squeeze. They can't come up with the cash they need to pay their rank and file. Israel's been working to increase the pressure on Hamas through expanding military operations and ending the flow of some humanitarian aid into Gaza, which Hamas has been stealing and using for terrorism. The shortfalls are creating hardship across Hamas's ranks and the Gaza cash economy, and signal a deepening organizational dysfunction in the militant group. And that has led to anti-Hamas demonstrations when people have noticed that they're not getting their checks. Another story, one that disturbs me, is that Trump has halted Israel's plans to strike Iranian nuclear plants. There's been internal debate within the administration, and the people who opposed the strike won, claiming that it would lead to a wider war. Tulsi Gabbard sided with those who opposed the strike, while Pete Hegseth and Vance supported the strike. We'll see what Trump does with this. I hope he does strike, and I think it's very likely that he will.
Well, Dick Morris, it's been an honor, and I would like to tell everyone Happy Easter again and Happy Passover.
Happy Easter.
God bless everyone, and I think we're out. Are we out there, Lux?
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
No. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
No. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.